So
Alrighty,
we
we're
had an
back.
internet crash. Sorry about that.
It does happen. No one would know if we didn't say. Um, you were making a point, which was
Basically, the
you were
point
making.
I was making, and I think it was already said, but I'll say it again quickly, just in case. We're talking about Thin Lizzy's fourth record today, which there's going to be a lot of comments by me about nascent Thin Lizzy finding their sound. It's their fourth album, and they still haven't found their sound yet. Because as time back in the 70s, there were all kinds of bands that could make a record label profitable, even if no one else could. Leonard Skinner, Pink Floyd, Kiss, David Bowie, all those guys, they were selling millions upon millions, and that's how the smaller bands are financed. And every year, less albums were purchased. The state of the recording industry did not start today. It was a big part of it, I think, is the lack of buying power the middle class has combined with more and more other types of entertainment. So in the 90s, it was if you were on a major label, you had to sell 350,000 copies or they voided your contract. Now think about that was 30 years ago. Think about that now. So that's why the good old days have so much more music than the present days.
That's an interesting take. I don't know that I fully agree with that take, but I will say that you're not far off in terms of the way you set that up. Um, with regard to Thin Lizzy, so really brief. The brief. This first section is gonna go quickly compared to our usual shit, unless Nick interrupts or has some thoughts and feedback. Interruptions are okay here. Um, the band is formed in high school between Phil Lynott and Brian Downey, the drummer.
After he
Um,
left the band that his uncle started and brought him into the Eagles, later the Black Eagles.
right, they had the Eagles, the Black Eagles. There was another band also, and so there was a rival band which involved Gary Moore at one point, who ends up coming into Thin Lizzy later on. And the Thin Lizzy sound that we know, they didn't have until later on, which is why this early era is them finding themselves. And it's not so much like they didn't know what they were doing, they were finding themselves. And it's not to say that
Correct.
these albums are not good. It's not to say that these albums are not worth having, especially the third one, which I am going to talk a little bit about briefly.
At no
But
point did I mean that wasn't good till they found themselves. Just
yeah, it
there
takes some
was
time. They don't.
there was more development.
The sound you associate with Thin Lizzy doesn't happen for a while, and then it kind of happens by accident, and then it really happens, and then you're like, oh my goodness, and they go on a run of albums that I believe is unparalleled, almost unparalleled. And I will also say you made a really good point about developing bands and A&R, which really almost doesn't exist anymore. Bands are expected to come into a label situation formed or fully formed. I heard a really amazing story last night at that show I mentioned. Uh, Tim Hogue Hodge, Tim Hodge was a up and coming songwriter in Nashville in the late 90s, and some management company, a big deal management company, reached out to him. He's like, I need you to write these songs. Were you interested in writing for an up and coming artist? And he's like, sure, but she can only work when she gets out of school. Okay, cool. Is she in college? Is it spring break we're waiting for? No, no. She gets out of high school every day and she gets off the bus at 4. So she can't start a writing session till 4. He's like, well, that's going to be weird. I'm like 40 something. This is going to be very weird. I don't think this is right for me. That young girl was Taylor Swift. Meanwhile, this guy has toiled in, not obscurity, but, toiled without the Taylor Swift thing. It was a funny story. He told it much better than I. But so development does still happen, but it doesn't happen at the level it used to. And also, bands used to have opportunities. If they saw something in you, they would ride with you for a while before cutting you loose. It wasn't like one album and you're done.
I
Um,
think
you know,
that's also part of why now we're getting older bands coming out as new bands.
this is a thing. Also, the preponderance of music marketing and PR and the availability of DIY type things that allows a band that has been doing in relative obscurity, let's say, for many years, suddenly at 40 something pop up with an album on Spotify. It's totally possible, which is also why teenage kids are on SoundCloud and Spotify with rap songs, because it's entirely on TikTok. And this is kind of where it's going. But so Thin Lizzy forms over 50 years ago, and ultimately becomes the Thin Lizzy we didn't quite know yet, and as a trio, as a power trio, much like Rush, maybe even predates Rush by a year or two, and Cream, and mainly centered around Phil Lynott, an incredible singer, an emerging bass player, a great songwriter, a soulful guy. Um, and you get this sort of congealment in the first couple of Thin Lizzy records. What are they? Are they Led Zeppelin blues rock? Are they Deep Purple, expansive, trippy rock? Are they psychedelic rock like Cream or The Dead? They have some funk stuff that would be like Hendrix or Sly and the Family Stone, like Hendrix Band of Gypsies or Sly and the Family Stone. What are they? They're not sure. They're finding their way. So the self-titled Thin Lizzy record kind of comes and goes. It's got a couple of solid tracks on it. The second record is Shades of a Blue Orphanage, which came out 50 years ago tomorrow as we record this. 50 years ago tomorrow. Not a well-known record, but also still has a couple of interesting songs, including the song Sarah about his grandmother, not to be confused with the song Sarah about his daughter many years later that most people know. Um, but they start to kind of find their
He
way.
quoted his grandmother's folksy wisdom his whole life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he was very close to his mother and his grandmother. They guided and shaped his whole life and his whole world
According to the
because
book, he
his
was
dad
not
wasn't around.
he wasn't close to his mother, really. She
Oh,
would
that's
see
not.
him. Now, keeping in mind, I'm only up to about 16.
Yeah, I
The line
think
out
later
16,
on. Well, his grandparents raised him, but later his mother.
right? And
What
his
happened? His mother used to work in London, and he was born in the Midlands. They moved to Dublin. He was like literally the one black kid in a whole community from a biracial family in the early late '60s in Ireland. Rough.
he was
Uh,
considered to be the first. In the way they described it in the book, was to many people he was the first Black Irishman.
I mean, that's obviously not true, but that's historical whitewashing and nonsense. But
How it was how the people there saw him
there's
as
a
that.
VH1 countdown. I hate to do this, but I'm gonna have to just be woke for a second, and you're all gonna be hostage to it for a minute. There's a VH1 countdown of greatest bands ever. They get to Thin Lizzy. I think it's in the top 100. And Lita Ford, I love Lita Ford, and I would like to interview and meet Lita Ford and ask her about this. She goes, "A black Irishman? What a concept. Yo, moron." There are many black people in England and Ireland, and many black people in all walks of life from all nationalities. You fucking ignorant twat. But anyway,
Diaspora is a real thing.
dumbass. Anyway, so born in England, raised in Dublin, mother to make money, single mom, help from the grandparents, thankfully. Thank you, Philomena. She goes to work in England most of the time and comes back on weekends and halls. So, as the Brits say, halls, and so holidays. And so he really is very lonely. He's ostracized. When he would finally go to England, even just a few years later as a teenager, there are signs that say no Irish, no blacks, no dogs in stores.
Oof.
And he is, alternately a very lonely and sad, but also a very talented, capable, handsome, overachieving kid. So he has a pendulum of ego that kind of swells and shrinks depending on his moments, by all accounts. And he grows this bravado shit where he's just like, I'm not going to take shit from anybody. And he was a tough street kid, actually. He had to be. He was getting his ass kicked and bullied all the time. So this kind of forms his value system. Where he was very interestingly enough, Thin Lizzy becomes a band later on that started in the classic rock era that punks actually respected and liked because they were kind of leather and studs and fist in the air and finger to your face kind of thing. And so the first two Lizzy records are just kind of here and there, middling, to be fair. Got some good songs, but just not what you would imagine as, great. And then they get to the third record, and the tides kind of turn. And what happens is in the third record, and it's still a trio. And, again, so Philo, Brian Downey on drums, not a powerful drummer, but an incredible grooving, shuffly guy who can play multiple styles. And Eric Bell, who never gets talked about because of the band is known for guitar players, incredible, phenomenal, legendary guitar players. And Eric was a phenomenal, incredible, legendary guitar player because when you hear Whiskey in the Jar, you're hearing Eric Bell. You're not hearing Scott You're not hearing, you're not hearing those, you're not hearing Gary Moore, you're not hearing Scott Gorham, you're not hearing Brian Robertson, you're hearing Snowy White, you're not hearing them, you're hearing Eric Bell. Eric Bell was key to getting this band off the ground, to helping develop the style we now know. But he also had kind of a breakdown and he couldn't last in the band. And then he kind of joined Noel Redding's solo band and he went to become a blues artist. He still plays around the UK and Europe.
I didn't know Noel Redding had a solo band. I'm not
Yes.
surprised. I just didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, Noel Redding is kind of it's kind of funny because like we could do a whole thing on Hendrix. I cut my teeth playing a lot of Hendrix stuff as a teen with my best friend Curtis Dunlap, and he would tell you that Mitch Mitchell was really crappy as a drummer and not befitting of Jimmy comparatively to other guys. And historically, it's Noel that music historians will tell you was the shitty weak link of the Hendrix experience because Jimmy used to go in and overdub all Noel's bass parts, and Noel didn't even notice. He didn't even notice it wasn't him playing. It's like, dude,
well, Jimi Hendrix only hired him because he liked Noel's hair.
I guess. I don't know.
That's what he said.
Oh, to you personally, or is that something you saw or read?
I saw him say it on an interview from the Hendrix VHS tape.
All right, then.
If I can show just how old I am real quick.
That's fair. So what happens by the third record, still a trio, is the band is recording this third record, and they as told in the movie Songs for While I'm Away, which is the song title of the Lizzy song. They are messing around in the studio, kind of like the warm up to get ready to cut tracks, and they're playing what is Whiskey in the Jar, which is a traditional Celtic folk song. And it was made popular by a group called the Dubliners, just like you would imagine, like the Weavers in America, Peter, Paul, and Mary, Pete Seeger. This is the equivalent of they're doing folk music for Ireland. And so Whiskey in the Jar is a well-known song. It's a drinking song, and it's like a very slow, just a very slow beatnik kind of folk song. And those guys are like rocking a little and playing it like a rock version. And the producer's like, stop.
Oh, you mean like La Bamba?
Yes. He's like, what are you doing? What is that? That's a hit song if I ever heard one. And they're like, dude, this is Whiskey in the Jar. Everyone knows. You don't know Whiskey in the Jar? He's like, well, I didn't recognize it, but if that's Whiskey in the Jar, you need to do it that way. Do your own version. So they put out Whiskey in the Jar as a single, and it kind of starts blowing up. And they record their third record, which again still isn't quite the harmony guitar. And you think of Whiskey in the Jar, you're thinking of that riff, and you're thinking of the harmony guitar solo as much as anything, and the story of it, etc. So, third record is Vagabonds of the Western World, which has almost a Kiss kind of Frank Frazetta album cover on it with this caricature of the band. And it's very psychedelic and larger than life. And they start to kind of coalesce this style that they came up with. And Whiskey in the Jar, again, is not an album track at this point, but it becomes a hit single. And Vagabonds comes out later, and the band starts to kind of become who they are. They still don't quite have the Lizzy sound pat down, but it's starting to come together. And there are songs like The Hero and the Madman and The Rocker, which is a well-known hit for them. It's like their first real hit beside after Whiskey in the Jar. A song for While I'm Away is on this album. It's the closing track, and it's kind of a mournful little folk ditty, like a Beatlesy thing, So they start to kind of become who they become. And Whiskey in the Jar becomes a radio single. They get on top of the pops, and they get an opening slot for the band Slade. Who,
that is the idea of that.
I know.
Of Thin Lizzy opening for Slade.
Well, Slade was apparently
I know.
A very popular band in Europe, especially Western Europe in the early 70s.
That's just even such a weird bill, even if Slade is opening.
They were booed off the stage, Thin Lizzy, many times booed off the stage.
Well, Jimi Hendrix was booed off the stage when he opened for the Monkees.
Many times. And unbelievably real. But so the band starts to become successful, and, they're starting to really kind of put it together: blues, early proto heavy metal, Motown, funk, soul, and they're simple, but you start getting this like storyteller vibe Phil always had. The music is starting to now catch up. Like Phil was always a good singer and lyricist. The music is now starting to catch up to the quality of the storytelling in the songs. So we go out of Vagabonds, and I've tried to make this as smooth and quick as possible as we get into their fourth album, Nightlife. Now they've had two back-to-back hit singles, Whiskey in the Jar, Oh, and The Rocker. And now they go to write this new record. Eric Bell kind of has a complete depressive meltdown and is just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I need a simpler thing. So he splits. And Brian and Fallow are like, do we call it a day? Is this band done and we do go do something else? Not call it this anymore? Eric was like the guy. He was as important as any of us. Like, even though, he,
man, that's a story as old as time. How many
right,
bands can we name right now where the classic lineup is not the original lineup?
right. Well, this does become
Black Sabbath for one.
somewhat the classic lineup. And so what happens is the band recruits decides, you know what we need to do? That Whiskey in the Jar thing was awesome. Let's go to more of a two guitar approach because it's clearly going to work. I don't know whoever decided like this solo for Whiskey in the Jar, this arrangement by Thin Lizzy needs dueling guitar solos when it was just the one guy. But like brilliant shit. So they get an American from Philly, Scott Gorham, who was living in England and living it up, a guy that many prophesied to be like a Jimi Hendrix type people. Jimi Hendrix had said Scott Gorham was one of his favorite guitar players, apparently, according to something I saw and read. And
Jimmy
Brian
also
Robertson.
loved fellow Irishman Rory Gallagher.
He did. Brian, who's weird that Rory Gallagher never ended up in Thin Lizzy because it just seems like he's the one not the one Irish legendary guitar player not to be in Thin Lizzy.
Could you
But
imagine if Thin Lizzy had Phil Lynott, Gary Moore, and Rory Gallagher all at one time?
I mean, the fact that they had Gary in and out of the band several times is insane. He's a genius. Brian goes on to play in Motorhead and is known for other bands, but Brian himself, in his own right, is Scottish and an incredible guitar player. And Scott is an incredible guitar player, a charismatic performer. This lion's mane of blonde hair kind of looked like could have been Hetfield's dad. Like this lion's mane of hair, and is just so lanky and thin and larger than life guitar style and just an incredible player. So now they have this like all-star team of guys. Eric Bell is a great guitar player, but maybe he wasn't like flamboyant, right? He wasn't like the persona to match Phil because Phil is an incredible performer. It starts to become an incredible performer at this point. So
I
they
don't
go to
think
make
his
this.
vocals could be overstated.
Okay.
Overstated, not under.
I see. Yeah, I don't agree, but okay. So they make the new record, Nightlife.
I'm saying he was amazing.
Okay, I
I
understand.
I realized I put it poorly, so I tried to
It's fine.
explain better.
It's fine. So weirdly enough, this record, while it doesn't quite have, it has one all-time classic. Just their version of it is not the classic; it's somebody else's. But like top to bottom, this is their best record so far. This is the record that coalesces the twin harmony sound all the time. This is the record. Okay, I'm an ignorant American person, so this may not come out correctly, but you please check me if it doesn't, or fans of ours, drop a comment and tell me if I'm wrong. You can have like your nationality and your ethnicity doesn't necessarily have to define what music you make. Now, Phil is an extremely Irish dude. He's references Irish folklore. He's got a European, a Western,
One of the
UK
last things he
swagger.
wrote was a poem about living in Dublin.
Right.
That was like one of the last things he wrote before he died.
Yeah. And so, but he's like extremely Irish. And, you know, there's a George Carlin sketch about James Brown being openly black, right? And Colin Powell is openly white. And so
Oh,
Phil Lynott is openly Irish, right? But also, like, that doesn't mean all your music has to sound like Irish influences. But they kind of start it's I maybe because of Whiskey in the Jar, maybe not, but just like you start getting this like lilting Celtic sound that becomes it always was part of Thin Lizzy, but I just think now it's kind of happening, right?
instead of
Where
it
it's in
becoming
the songs.
a part of, it becomes a factor of
That's go fabric, even. That's a
a
good one.
fabric of.
Factor.
Yes. In now from we're both Americans here, and I'm middle American, which middle American has a very different perspective than the coastals. I'm the Midwest coastal elite, as I like to put it. But because of that Celtic overlay, because of that twin guitar harmony all the time, it not being a trick, as much as Iron Maiden is a twin guitar band, they weren't a twin guitar harmony band. They were twin guns. One guy shoots, one guy shoots, one guy, same as Slayer. They're taking turns, popping off. So though the Celticness and the Irishness, I'm sure in Dublin is common, when you come over here to America, it becomes less common and more unique. And that's, I'm sorry, I know there's a whole big world out there. I visited a few of the countries out there, but I'm always going to come with an American perspective. And Thin Lizzy becomes a classic rock band. And when you become a classic rock band, when you become a canonized band, as it were, Thin Lizzy, Led Zeppelin, Leonard Skinner, Pink Floyd, Kiss, the bands we throw out all the time, you stop becoming from this country, in my mind. You start becoming from this place. And that place is a type of music or an era of music. So, sorry.
No, that's great.
No, I'm apologizing to everyone else. That's
no. I mean, it is. Yeah, like it. Yeah. So this is the record where it's not all bangers. However, the sound is now here.
I disagree. I love
it's mostly
every song.
Bangers. I do too, and I have notes finally. I'm so concerned with. I would like people to, like I said, I'm gonna hammer this home in the next 5 weeks. I really hope people come away from this thing loving this band as much as I do. You may not, but I hope you do, because I really feel like this band, especially when we start talking about these next batch of records after this week, they're so criminally underrated, and only the hit songs are really known here in the West. So let's quickly jet through the tracks, and then I'll give some more feedback.
I just want to say one thing.
Sure.
I have not heard a single song off of this album that I can remember. There's probably one or two on Live and Dangerous, but I didn't know any of these tunes.
All right. One of them is, in fact, a classic rock classic, probably certainly one of the top 500 songs of all time by Rolling Stones list, and is an insane hit song for many other people. Just that this band's version of it isn't, and I'll get into why. But so the album opens with it's all the tracks are by Phil with a few exceptions. He really He also started to kind of dominate the band here. Like, he wanted an equal thing, but he also felt like, okay, I'm bringing in these guys. It's always going to be my vision, but now it's really, I'm going to start directing this thing. And he co-produced the album. It was the first time he co-produced. And so they open with She Knows, which is a very sunny, not ass-kicking song, but it's a good song. It's like a very good pop, rock, folk song. And it's a love song. And it's actually written by Scott Gorham with a little bit of help from Philo. And, it's an interesting choice for an opener. I might have picked a different song because it's a little, it's a little light to open a track for such a band that is focused on being badasses, but it's also like, it's an undeniably great song.
I liked this song. There was some of the, as I alluded to earlier, there was some of that nascent Thin Lizzy on this track. There were some guitar harmonies that were closer to Canned Heat doing guitar harmony than Phil Lizzy doing guitar harmony. Right. Meaning they were playing together, but they weren't playing together correctly. But
I understand.
It came out really well. And
yeah,
I thought it was a really good album opener because, it put a smile on my face and it made me want to hear more.
Right. The title track is next, Nightlife. And in different parts of the world, I don't know if this was a pressing thing, you will see this album alternately as Nightlife as one word or Nightlife as two.
It is the releases of the albums. The first releases were one word. The later releases were two.
My man coming through with the knowledge.
Hey, I'm good for one or two facts a day.
You are. This song as the title track, and also She Knows is the longest song on the record, which is also weird to open this album with a very long song in the 70s. Unheard of. Normally an opener is the shortest song on the album.
2.5. 2.5 is a good 70s opener.
Yeah, so this is 5:13 for She Knows. Nightlife is next and is a sub 4 minute. And it's okay. It's a rockin' song. It's
Yeah,
not spectacular. It's not underwhelming. It's just good.
it's a great post opener song. This is not a song you would use to open a side or close a side, but it's a great segue into more. And it's also important to remember how vinyl records, especially at that time, they set up their track listing based on the the sound quality of the records. That's why as they get, excuse me, as they move forward, slower tracks, quieter tracks become the last songs on each side because the grooves are smaller. So anyway, that's the point. But this one, I remember it. I thought Phil's vocals were very, very wonderful. However, that's all this has. The lyrics aren't anything thought provoking. The music is not terribly memorable. It's not that hooky kind of Thin Lizzy yet. We haven't gotten there. They're still, they're still overhauling the engine here.
Fair. What might be, it might have been the best track on this album, if not for the next song. It's Only Money is now starting to kick major ass. So this song straight up rules. It's hard rock, proto heavy metal, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Rainbow, all in the pocket, similar, riffy, aggressive, great vocals, good lyrics, not like deep, but you
I
know, pretty good
it's
lyrics.
the lyrics are not deep, are not, metaphorically wonderful by any stretch, but he's talking about something.
Right. He's got
And
he's got meaning. And I do want to say that this song has been covered a lot. And if not for the next song, it would have been the most covered song by the band, but the band's arrangement of Whiskey in the Jar would be like the third most copied song. It's been covered by Concrete Blonde on an album track. It's been covered by The Obsessed as a doom metal song. It's been covered by John Norum from heavy metal fame, sort of 6 degrees of separation from the Thin Lizzy John Norum on his albums. And it's a badass track. Like it's a rocker.
this is the best track on the record and there's no questioning that.
I would have flip flopped this in She Knows, personally. I would have had this open the album. It's 2:47. The other song is longer and chill. It makes much more sense to me in my
Okay, I get that, and conventional wisdom definitely says do that thing you just said.
Yeah.
However, oh god, I'm not going to use that metaphor. I like this being the meat of the banana. You peel back a little bit. Oh, there's She Knows. You peel back a little bit more. Oh, it's Nightlife. Oh, look at that. It's Only Money. I'm going to eat that banana.
My favorite part of the banana is the banana strings. And if you're going to ever bake anything with banana, like banana bread, you want the banana strings in there. Just throwing that out there, some free advice from Kiwi.
Welcome to The Delicious Dish with Ghost Cult Mag and Glacially Musical. We will tell you how to boil down your bones.
Next on NPR, Terry Gross and Fresh Air. Anyway, so we will not go into Pete Sweaty's balls. Let's talk about one of the greatest songs of
Muffins.
all. Let's talk about one of the greatest songs of all time, and I'm not exaggerating. Still in Love with You. This song, not this version of this song, but in many cases, the original band writes a song and somebody else makes it their own and makes it incredible. This version's good, and this song is amazing. It is a mournful, sad love song of the highest order. The arrangement ends up changing for other people. They do the next version's arrangement is the one that's the most copied. But this made money. This song's a banger. It made money for them. Phenomenal guitar stuff, wonderful, sad lyrics, incredible singing. You really get the whole range of emotions. Just the arrangement is not the arrangement that everybody remembers.
I wish I had time to listen to the first three records because what I'm about to say, I don't know if it's going to be accurate, but I feel like Phil is coming into his pipes. And
Totes.
it's not uncommon for a vocalist, say Roger Waters, say Ace Frehley, say Paul Stanley, or Gene Simmons, to on their first couple of records sing like Howard Stern in his early radio gigs. Welcome, this is Howard Stern on the radio, before he can talk like himself. And this is where we start to hear, it's not just the twin harmonies coming together on this record. It's not just the riffs coming together on this record, but it's everyone taking a step forward simultaneously. And Phil, he might have taken a couple, three steps here vocally on this album. And there's not a bum note. There's not, everything is very, oh God, what's the word? I don't want to use the word believable, but that's probably the easiest word to come up with right now off the top of my head. It's very genuine. There's the word. It's very, the vocals are very genuine, very emotional, very emotive, and they either put a tear in your eye or a smile on your lips. And just with the tone of his voice, much less the words.
And again, he came out of the box as an excellent singer, but this is where the voice starts, the vocal talent and ability starts matching his words and his feelings and meanings perfectly. So don't think to say that the earlier stuff he's not singing good, because he is. And actually, his singing is the highlight of the early records that don't have that many memorable songs. It's his voice that's carrying a lot of the tunes. Well, this song becomes a humongous international, huge hit single for Gary Moore as a solo artist. There's a version of him and Phil just alone doing it, where Phil sings. There's many covers of this, including Sade. Of unbelievably, this has been covered countless times.
That is the first name drop of Sade on this podcast.
And for real, there should be more. Because she's a smooth operator.
That's her.
Coast to coast, LA to Chicago.
I didn't know that was her.
Yeah. So the Live in Dangerous version of this song is the version probably most people know. And Gary Moore loved this song so much, it's kind of like why he wanted to be in the band, and then made it his own song, his own hit single. And he's associated clearly with that song. Rest in peace, Gary Moore. You'll hear that again soon. So amazing
talent. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, super duper talented guitar player. And in a band of incredible guitar players. Gary Moore, you argue who's the best. It's Gary or Scott probably, but Eric was great. Brian is great. Snowy. The fifth song.
If you want to dig some Metallica into this, Kirk Hammett now does own Gary Moore's Les Paul.
He owns
that was given to him by Peter Green.
Right, which is also a whole other mood and insane. And also, let's just say that, like you were saying about Maiden earlier, Metallica's twin harmony guitar stuff is directly from this. This and like Love Gun Kiss is where Mustaine's comes from, and James's is this. And so that, and Kirk.
Lars and James were big Thin Lizzy fans.
Huge. Yeah.
Kind of like how Jason and Kirk were big Kiss fans.
I'm pretty sure that not only do you see the early Metallica guys wearing Thin Lizzy shirts, Cliff has a Thin Lizzy patch on his on his jacket, not his vest, but his long denim jacket you see in the Ride the Lightning press photos is a Lizzy patch on the front. So the next song is short, and it's a really interesting piano ballad to close out side one of the album, Frankie Carroll, which feels like a very Irishy storytelling song, and
it's a bold choice.
It is a very bold choice, and sounds for the year. We're talking about 1974, so this is early to mid era Bowie, post psychedelic Young Americans Bowie, and it sounds like a Bowie or an early Elton John song, and not in a bad way.
We're also 2 years pre Beth. We are 2 years post Changes. We are at the time where Led Zeppelin is on the downward swing. Sorry, everybody else.
You shut your whore mouth, Nicholas.
That's what
Cameron.
Jimmy Page said.
I don't care what Jimmy Page said. He was wrong. House of the Holy is the downswing. Anyway,
that's the zenith.
Boulder Dash. Okay. Anyway. Sorry. I make your point, sir. Not about.
My point is we are at a transitional moment in the 70s. In that we are a year out from Dark Side of the Moon. We are all of a sudden we are 2 years from 2112. This is the 70s. The 60s didn't really end until 1974.
That's fair. You said that before, and I don't disagree.
I don't know that I've said that, but I've said a lot of times, the decade doesn't end when the calendar flips. The decade
Yeah.
ends. There's always some gray areas, but we're turning the page finally on the psychedelic peace and love into the riffy kind of, the blues are being exercised a little bit from rock music, and we are moving into rock music, arena rock, blues-based rock, being different from the blues and different from Led Zeppelin. And all of a sudden, a lot of bands are throwing out piano tracks.
Yes, and like I don't know who in the band plays this piano. I didn't really look at who
If
played it
anyone
on
in the
record.
band plays it,
It could have been a
frankly.
guest. It looks like it was a guest.
Session musicians are a thing.
Jean Ellen Roussel, Hammond organ piano, tracks 1, 4, 5, and 10. Okay. There's also
And we're
string
called
arrangements on.
No Hammond.
There's
Yeah,
also
the
a string.
strings were beautiful on
Beautiful.
this song.
Jimmy Horowitz did the strings on several of these tracks, and it's
Related
tight.
to Adam?
No idea.
I know, probably not.
Doubt it. You and your puns. Anyway, Frankie Carroll, solid, interesting
I like
choice to close side one. Not a,
I like this song.
yeah, I don't dislike it. I don't dislike it at all. But
We
it's
have
not,
a different vocal delivery from Mr. Lina.
like I said, Bowie.
To me, it sounded more like I think earlier you described this sounding like a bit like a drinking song,
Mm.
and it definitely sounds like something that would be sung in the pub after they've all had a couple of Guinness.
A couple. So that's side one, which
Guinness
again
with
has
some Jameson drop in the middle of
yeah.
it.
Side one has 3 bangers and 2 solid songs.
Yeah, agreed.
Which is better than you can say about their last 3 albums. So sorry. And also, again, Whiskey in the Jar is a single and not an actual album track at this point.
Remember, kids, there used to be things called non-album singles that worked on soundtracks.
A lot of them. And just in general, they would just were hits. So it would just sell. Singles would sell because people wouldn't invest in a whole album, even though it's just a couple of bucks difference. Side 2 opens with an incredible song, Showdown, which is kind of a funky R&B rock song. Beautiful singing, great show of his range and lyricism. And it's I feel like this song's a panty dropper. A lot of man milk has been leaked over this track. A lot of babies born and conceived.
I'm making faces at what he's saying.
Nick is making faces. A lot of mood juice has come out in the mouths of babes because of this song.
Oh, whoa, Jimmy Page.
Showdown is great.
You're gonna have a showdown.
Any thoughts?
I like this song. I would probably remember it a whole lot more had I had this on vinyl and it, starting off the side. But it's the second side on this one isn't as good as the first side for me. But how many records have side 2 as good as side 1? That's kind of why you have sides. But I don't have strong memories of this one. I know I listened to it twice today. I know that. I got through the first 7 tracks twice today. Ricky Carroll really stuck with me because it was so odd.
Frankie?
Yes, damn it. Wow, that's not like a dick.
That's okay. This is interesting, by the way, that I just discovered this. First of all, Nightlife borrows the title and the chorus from a Willie Nelson song of the same name. And Nelson is never credited on this. I wonder if they ever made good for it or he just didn't bother. Oh, and also She Knows.
He may have been high.
He might have been extremely high and not noticed. By the way, apparently on the cassette version of the original album, what did I just say? She Knows shouldn't be the opening song. Showdown was the first song on the cassette version, and She Knows was in place of Showdown to open side 2. Interesting and better.
Not the first time we have found differences in mediums.
Absolutely.
The last 2 Robert Plant albums were missing a track.
They were too long.
Well, they were too long anyway, but still, they still missed a track.
Yeah, that last one was like, oh my god, when is this gonna be on?
I've got a record by Unearthed Elf out of somewhere in Wisconsin, Milwaukee probably, where he had to rearrange the running order because of to get it onto one record.
Fair enough. Number 7, Banshee, song 2, side 2. I have in my notes Allman Brothers like, which I think is very sums it up pretty good. It's a very southern rock, American rock and blues influenced song. Not that that's a problem for me or Zeppelin-y. It's kind of good. It's it's just kind of there. I think it's meant to be a interlude. It's not meant to be a full song. It's only a minute and a
It's,
half.
it's definitely something you stick in the middle of a side.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a band, as we have said many times, has not found themselves. And
They're
there's a
starting to though. They're starting to. See, I say this is the album they really started
look,
to.
they're in the right sector, they're in the right neighborhood, they're
Yeah.
almost there. But
Musically, the Thin Lizzy you think of exists on this record like it didn't before, and I think that's the thing I want people to take
agreed,
away.
it exists more than it ever has before. But
Okay.
we're at the beginning. We're so there's a lot of different hats on this record. And this is another one of those hats.
Fair enough. 8, Philomena, written for his grandma who raised him, his grandmother. This is a very, soulful song. This is, fully written by Philo about his grams. And, it's touching. I don't think it's brilliant, but it's a very, an emotionally weighty track.
And that's what I think his strength on this record is. It's not about, I don't think lyrically speaking, he's told amazing stories. I don't think lyrically speaking, he's crafted some metaphors or painted some wonderful pictures. However, his delivery of the lyrics that he has written create a picture, create a mood, create a feeling. When I said earlier, you've either got a smile on your face or a tear in your eye, smile on your lips or a tear in your eye. Here we go. We got a tear in his eye. He loved his grandmother deeply and wonderfully, and the way it was described so far, and again, I'm not into his 20s even in the book yet. I haven't gotten to the skiing. His grandmother, he saw her as his mother figure. His uncle that I mentioned earlier was only 18 months older than him.
Whoa.
His grandmother had 16 children, I think it was. I'm not going to mention anything. I'm just going to leave it at that. You divine what you want.
It's Catholics.
Oh my God, you said it. We're all thinking it, but
Stop doing it. You have too many mouths to feed.
I mean, my in-laws are Catholic, and my wife has 25 cousins.
Holy cow. All right then.
I don't even know their kids' names
Do
unless
you
they can tell
guys
me their names.
do you go to family reunions where you all wear the same color shirt that says "We're the Johnson family"?
I just go there and no one talks to me. So
Is the food must be good though?
no, you bring your own food. It's too
Oh
big.
no.
It's too big for that. So you got to bring your
Oh
own food.
shit. That sucks.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
know.
Um.
I didn't marry her for her family. I married her.
Yeah. She sounds like your Nick's wife sounds amazing. I've never met her, but she sounds unbelievable.
Totally is. Totally is.
The next song is arguably one of the most underrated songs in the Thin Lizzy catalog. And I know I'm saying a lot of wild shit today, but I just feel like this is such a step up from their other shit. So Shalala is like Clutch 50 years before Clutch. This song is unreal. It's heavy. It's heavy metal. Before it's Black Sabbath. It's Zeppelin, heaviest Zeppelin. Levee breaks, no quarter
And
Zeppelin.
it's called a Shalala.
Yeah. Like throw that out for a second. It's called Shalala. Whatever. It's not Mr. Jones. It's Shalala. But whatever it
Wow.
is, it's heavy. Tribal drumming, earthly riffs, heavy bass, aggressive. It's been covered by Slough-Feg, which is one of the heaviest bands in the world in the doom metal genre. Okay, live and on record, this song's been covered, and no one talks about it. And I feel like I'm the only person that has ever loved this song, really, beside the band.
I've loved it today.
Yeah, so it's a heavy track. Any other thoughts besides you loved it today?
It's called Shalala.
Yeah, it's not the best thing. They probably didn't have, again, one of those like Robert Plant things. Whatever the track name is in the practice session stays.
Look, it's not far from Shubba
It's Shubba Lubba Love.
It's
Red Hot
basically
Chili Peppers.
it's proto Shubba.
It is a proto Shubba Love, but the track is a banger.
No, it's
It's
a
a
very good
real
song.
heavy banger, and it's almost a precursor to what's to come on the next record, where they start to really lean into the heaviness, which
And
is what you love about
we
this
haven't
band.
really talked about the riffing much on this record.
There's a lot of
but
riffs, man. A lot of
there's
solos
a
and harmony
lot of
guitar.
riffs, a lot of good solos. There's a lot
Twin
of
leads.
what I call angular guitar sounds.
Hmm.
I don't know how else to describe it. I don't know if anybody even knows what that means, but it's
I mean,
like,
I think of Black Flag when I think of that word, or Dillinger Escape Plan, but you must mean something else.
no, I do. Wow, Dillinger Escape Plan. It's like graphing. It's like a graphing calculator where the 8 is broken, so it's like missing stuff, which makes it uncomfortable.
See
But
also Meshuggah, every album. I love
no,
Meshuggah, but go
don't
ahead.
see Meshuggah. Meshuggah is they just want to win the heavy metal arms race, and
They
they
did.
win. That's great, fine, whatever. Write some songs though. Hot take. I said it. No, like that the like the boys are back in town. The harmony, that is an angular riff where it's
Okay.
going somewhere and
It's
poof,
not a pentatonic
right,
classic blues scale. It actually goes in different directions in a
right.
lot of
That's
ways. I
an
understood what
angular,
you meant.
and there's a lot of that on this record,
Fair enough.
and that is something that really hadn't been heard much before because we still have pentatonic blues all over everything at this point.
True. And that's one of the things that we're going to end up talking about next week is when Lizzy matures out of this phase to the next phase, they almost transcend the pentatonic scale and forget it completely, which is why they sound so unique in the next bunch of albums because like it's almost not there.
Well, I
Still
mean,
Loving You is like one of the last times you hear of a box guitar solo, of
look, if
a
you
six
know
note solo.
if you know minor pentatonic, you can play 80% of all Black Sabbath and 80% of all Led Zeppelin.
True.
So and those bands are so omnipresent that it just feels like everyone did that. Kirk Hammett actually gave up the pentatonic after a while because everybody did it.
I needed to give up the wah wah. But anyway,
No, he
just
did not. He needed
he
two wah
shouldn't.
wah.
No.
Two.
So Shalala, not the best titled song, but a heavy ass song. Good track. The album closes on a bit of a downer. Dear Heart. A very
I like it when an album closes like that.
I know you do. I tend to go for the more uplifting, transcendent song, but that's not always possible. And I'm gonna say Dear Heart, what it lacks in, it's not a lacking song. What it lacks in its oomph and PMA, it's not positive, it's very sad, is in a masterpiece of vocals and lyrics because it's actually, again, it's that street Lizzy, it's that street Philo, it's that street fighting man. This is a song about drug addiction. This is a song about the realities of unhappiness and what it drives you to alcoholism and drug addiction, which factors heavily in Phil's life after this point, or maybe even up to this point. And so we just didn't. He hadn't really expressed it. So you do have She Knows, Still in Love with You, Showdown, Philomena, and Dear Heart that have emotional gravity. So that's more than half the record of just very deep, penetrating to your soul songs, even if the music is not like it matching it. So I do like Dear Heart. It's just very sad. And like go back and listen to this song, go listen to these words, and then you'll be like, oh, I understand now. This guy was already in a lot of pain to begin with, and
Well,
then other
yeah.
things.
I'm not going to speak for him by any stretch, but I can imagine that his upbringing, his childhood, because he's still basically a child at this point. It's 1974. What is he, 18, 20,
No, he's much
22,
older. He's in his 20s.
75?
No,
I'm sorry. I think like 25-year-olds are kids still.
I
So
think he died at 34 in 1986. So he's not yet, or
I didn't
36. So
realize he
he's
was
not that
that
young.
young. Wow.
Yeah, very young. We
Okay,
got
fair enough.
robbed. We got robbed. So he's like 22 here, 23.
22, 23. That's still a kid.
With his fourth record in 4 or 5 years.
Well, yeah,
In 3 years. His fourth record in 3 years. So, and it closes on a saddie, a little frowny. But
let's also for a second look at the world at this point in time. Let's look at the swath of popular music. 1973 to 5, okay? Give me a melancholy song by one of the big bands.
I mean, I don't know. Going to
Exactly.
California?
Really?
I don't know.
I didn't see any girls.
I'm going through changes.
This time.
Changes?
I give you Changes. That's piano ballad.
Yeah.
It's the 70s were a lot like the nostalgic, remembered 80s where everything was cocaine and parties, but it's in this feelings, genuine emotion. As much as I love bands like Led Zeppelin, not a whole lot of it in them. You know, a lot of it is parties and, oh, I don't want to use that phrase, so I'm not going to. Parties and, oh, look, we care about things like fish in the water. Marvin Gaye cares about fish in the water, so do we. And I mean, Led Zeppelin always sounded disingenuous when they tried to like be emotional. Robert Plant was far better when he sang emotionally about Lord of the Rings. I mean, that I believed. But the idea of in 1974 having multiple emotions was foreign for a musician. You know, Kiss does not write a song in 20 records where they're not happy and thrilled forever while they're dealing with everything that they're going through all the time.
Tears Are Falling or I Still Love You are the first two sad songs ever
Tears
by
Are
Kiss.
Falling is not sad.
No?
No, that song is...
Maybe the tears he's talking about are not the tears you cry out of your eye, but the tears you cry out of your...
Whoa, okay. You cannot be sad in fingerless gloves with fringes and a giant pink unitard. It's impossible. You cannot wear that without smiling. And then you got that kick-ass Bruce Kulick guitar solo, like his best solo ever. No, it's not sad. I Still Love You was sad, but you know,
why are we talking about Kiss?
We can't help ourselves.
You can't help yourself.
You started it.
I mean, Dead Heart. Dead Heart's a good song. It's an interesting choice to end the record. This record starts to kind of bring together what becomes the Thin Lizzy we know on the next record. It is Gary Moore, by the way, that plays lead guitar on this track, in this version of this album. So I think like Phil was circling Gary, and Gary was circling the band, but he just didn't join. He demoed some songs with them. He demoed this song with them. He played the solo on the album. There's also a Irish singer, Frankie Miller, who I really have no awareness of, that also sings co-lead vocals on Still in Love with You, did a whole verse and a chorus. I didn't notice. Sounds like Phil. Similar to Roy Harper, and how Roger and Roy Harper sound a lot alike, and also Roy Harper weirdly sounds like Robert Plant sometimes.
Did you know that Glenn Hughes was on the Motley Crue self-titled solo record?
No.
He is.
All right, then.
Listen to that record and tell me if you can find it, because I sure as hell couldn't.
I couldn't. Anything is better than Vince. But anyway.
It was John Corabi.
That one. This record is Anything is Better Than Vince. There it is. Yeah, man, this is the first really top to bottom record from the band that's like no filler and all at least decent to good. If Agreed. Some of them are great. Some of them are great. The whole record's not great, but like a lot of the tracks are excellent and good. And they really start to find themselves in time for the next record. And the next few weeks, we're going to do one record at a time. And I think that's going to suit the pod, suit the respect for the albums. And again, I will say we're kind of truncating the beginning of the career because I could have done Vagabonds as a whole record. And we're truncating, we're going to just, so advance warning, so don't yell at us later. You probably will. We're going to truncate the end of the Lizzy career by stopping abruptly before they still had like a couple of good records, but we're stopping short. Maybe we'll mention them at the end, but we're not going to delve deep. And so I just wanted to kind of stop. I'm ready to stop here and say, I really like this record. In hindsight, obviously people know the couple of hit songs, but I think it's a good... Shalala is a heavy... So if you love heavy metal, go back and listen to that Shalala song. Forget about the title for a second and just rock out, because it's worth it. And I would love to see Clutch do a cover of that, by the way. Again, it sounds like Soap Makers. It sounds like a Clutch. Elephant Riders. It sounds like that on the drums. And this dude is not known as a heavy banging drummer. He's known as like a shuffle groove kind of dude.
For me, this record is a solid 7.5 out of 10, which, to be clear, I don't rate records like grade school grades, you know, so 7.5, that's better than 75% of all records that have come before it. That's a good thing. 5 is mediocre, 1 is bad.
I feel like 5 is poor. 5 and 4 are very poor to me, but I'm a little harsher than you.
it just determines how you do it. Anyway, not the point.
It's okay.
I'll
But
call it a
anyway, yeah.
strong record. It's got three probably great songs, and everything else is at least good.
Yeah, "Still in Love with You" is inarguably one of the best songs ever written, ever. And it's just maybe
Probably
not this version that people hear, but like that song is not, in question.
probably the worst song on the record would be the
Nightlife.
Frankie Carroll.
Okay.
But Frankie Carroll is so amusingly interesting that and I like that song. I think it's a really good song, but that's probably the worst song on the record. So if the worst song on the record is this goofy wackadoo song that doesn't know what it is, okay, that's probably right. But Nightlife is a little pedestrian, the song itself. But that's about as far as it goes. You've got a lot of really good stuff, a lot of really, really great stuff as well. So here we have a band that if I had heard this contemporarily, I would have thought to myself, okay, this is someone to pay attention to.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, man. This was a very good first one.
I
And
agree.
we're really gonna the can open with the next couple because they just get progressively more awesome in my personal view.
So get with us next week. If you are still with us, thank you. I appreciate this because I know I listen because I need to hear my own voice because I am that much of a narcissist. So as always, Keefe, thank you for being here. Thank you for indulging my beliefs that I matter. And I'm just kidding. I'm awesome. Motherfucker, to quote my good man Spose, motherfucker, I'm awesome. But I do appreciate everybody checking in. I do appreciate everybody who has stuck with us. Our audience is growing. Thank you very much. Please share. It is, as I have said before in the past, I believe this content is worthwhile. It is. I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was worthwhile. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun. And that's what matters. I have fun. Hopefully you have fun listening and hate me. So anything else?
I'm all good. Take us home, Daddy.
All righty. Thank you for listening to the Glacially Musical Pouredcast. As always, it does not play in Peoria.